Tonight, the search for answers. A senior Ruby Princess doctor questions why sick passengers were allowed to disembark in Sydney. Good evening, I'm Juanita Phillips. This is ABC News. New hope in the fight against the virus. Trials of a human vaccine about to start. The exclusive interview with a former Sydney student framed then cleared of terror offences. Preparing to mark Anzac Day under conditions never seen before. And game on. The NRL says it has the green light to resume next month. A senior doctor on board the Ruby Princess says she was surprised that passengers were allowed to disembark in Sydney last month. The doctor is the first person to give evidence to the public inquiry, which began today. The cruise liner has been given official orders to leave Australian waters by tomorrow night. It doesn't leave much time for chartered flights to be organised for the hundreds of stranded crew members still wanting to get off the ship. Here's crime reporter Mark Reddy.
Welcomed with a luxury hotel room, but not for long. Hours after settling in, 9 crew, including 2 Italians, were put back on a bus. Hold on. And under police escort, driven straight to the airport. Others got to stay the night, including Irish singer Giselle O'Meara, who tested positive for coronavirus while on the Ruby Princess.
We're finally on our way home, which is unbelievably exciting.
The repatriation continued in Port Kembla today, but it was slow, uncertain, and at times confusing.
Please know we are working through all the necessary approvals to make this happen before the ship sails, but there are a number of challenges to overcome.
115 crew members from 9 countries were loaded onto buses. Some were dropped at hotels, others put straight onto planes. 21 of them are infected with COVID-19, forced to quarantine in hotels for 14 days. As more crew checked into hotels, a public inquiry began hearing evidence about the Ruby Princess debacle. One of the ship's doctors said there was no way of testing for coronavirus before the vessel docked in Sydney last month.
Because we could not analyse any samples.
But it goes without saying that you were not testing everybody on board, were you?
No.
Even though flu swabs were taken of some sick passengers, all were allowed to disembark at Circular Quay.
I was surprised that we were allowed to do that without waiting for the results to come through.
And the fact that there were still outstanding COVID-19 swabs for people on board, passengers on board that were unwell with flu-like symptoms, it was also a risk to allow those people to go out amongst the community.
I would agree with you.
With the ship given official orders to leave tomorrow, there's this warning from the Police Commissioner.
Everyone's had plenty of time to organise charter flights, including Carnival.
And some consulates, including the Philippines, are now scrambling to get stranded crew on flights before the ship finally heads home. Mark Reddy, ABC News, Sydney.
The number of COVID-19 cases in Australia continues to fall, while the number of people who've recovered is on the way up. There have been just 8 new cases across the country, but 2 more deaths, both in New South Wales. This state had its lowest number of cases in 6 weeks. Victoria and South Australia are the only other states with positive tests. Australia is pushing for a new global early warning system to prevent another pandemic. It's trying to get international support to give the World Health Organization or another body similar powers to weapons inspectors. As political editor Andrew Probyn explains, the aim is to ensure critical medical data is shared quickly.
Scott Morrison's idea is simple enough: to make sure that when there's another serious disease or viral outbreak, the world knows about it very quickly. That's not what happened with COVID-19. China's first case was in mid-November. Wuhan's wet market's believed to be the source. China didn't notify the World Health Organization until the end of December, and the WHO didn't declare a pandemic until March 11, a fortnight after Australia had done so. Valuable time was lost, almost 180,000 lives lost so far. The PM's proposal is to have international health inspectors with unfettered powers, a bit like UN weapons inspectors. He shared the idea with President Donald Trump this morning, as well as with the German and French leaders. Finding the mechanism will be the challenge. The WHO is considered unwieldy and China's likely to resist. But an international coalition is building to make sure the world's better prepared for the next pandemic.
An airline industry veteran predicts that if Virgin Australia survives, up to 40% of staff could lose their jobs. It's a worrying worst-case scenario for workers based on the expectation that a much smaller airline will emerge. Regional Australia is also likely to lose services, meaning that fares outside major cities would probably rise too. Andrew Robertson reports.
Empty airports equals empty wallets, but hopes of flying again remain high for Virgin Australia staff like husband and wife Dave and Alex Berger.
Yeah, we just hope that we can get back out into the skies very shortly, and we trust that we will.
Virgin's administrators say no jobs will be lost while they're in charge, but once the airline is sold, there are no guarantees. It's widely expected Virgin's new owners would ditch international flights and some loss-making domestic routes. Tiger Airways will also probably disappear.
If that's the case, then I think that they'll scale back on employment by 30 or 40%, which means a reduction in the number of jobs by between 3,000 and 4,000 employees.
Virgin Australia currently employs around 10,000 people, but says it contributes to around 65,000 other jobs in its suppliers and in the tourism industry.
United Workers Union is really concerned that when the new Virgin emerges, that there's going to be fewer jobs. We're also concerned about what type of jobs they're going to be.
If Virgin becomes an airline focusing only on profitable capital city routes, it will be a body blow for many regional areas. Jobs will be lost, travel options will be limited, and fares will almost certainly go up. Virgin currently flies to 44 destinations, including 36 regional centres. And at Karratha in Western Australia, the Mayor says Virgin has brought many benefits.
If we lost Virgin and there was nothing else came in its place, it would be a big impact to regional communities like ours.
And there's another threat to jobs. The Chinese-owned company that provides ground services and baggage handling at most airports is threatening to sack 80% of its workers unless it gets a $125 million government bailout. Andrew Robertson, ABC News.
Singapore was initially hailed for its response to coronavirus, but it's now dealing with a huge jump in cases after an outbreak among foreign workers who live in dormitories. You can see on this chart how the number of cases has accelerated. The country is now having its worst week of the pandemic so far. There was a record number of cases on Monday, and more than 1,000 infections have been reported each day since then. Experts say it shows what can happen if authorities become complacent. ABC correspondent Jake Sturmer reports.
Migrant workers underpin Singapore's construction industry. But their cramped living conditions mean highly infectious diseases like coronavirus can spread rapidly. Singapore seemed to have the virus under control, but it's been caught out.
No matter how well prepared you are, any blind spots, try and find them now.
Professor Dale Fisher and his colleagues have this week been inside the dormitories to test and treat workers. Physically distanced, these workers are being advised how to try to contain the outbreak.
The community engagement is going to be what's critical. You need to be able to tell people how to protect themselves.
Singapore's story shows how damaging one outbreak can be. While cases among these migrant workers have exploded, in the wider community, infection rates have fallen dramatically.
Things feel okay. We're still allowed to go out and exercise.
Lauren Hendry Parsons is an Australian working in Singapore and isn't too worried about the outbreak.
There's been a sense of trust in that so long as we wear our masks, stay indoors, we're going to be okay together.
But authorities fear there's a hidden number of cases they don't know about because the number of untraceable infections hasn't come down, so the lockdown's been extended until June.
I hope you understand that this short-term pain is to stamp out the virus, protect the health and safety of our loved ones, and allow us to revive our economy.
A revival that will be watched for the world over, with many countries looking to avoid a similar sudden spike. Jake Sturmer, ABC News.
Human trials are about to start in Britain on a coronavirus vaccine, and Australian researchers are playing a crucial role. But scientists caution we're still in the very early stages of finding a vaccine. Bridget Brennan reports.
Under fire for its delayed response to COVID-19, the British government is now funding 2 multi-million-dollar vaccine trials.
This is uncertain science, but I'm certain that we will throw everything we've got at developing a vaccine.
Oxford University researchers will begin a safety trial on humans tomorrow.
We're also very interested to see whether or not it can prevent cases of coronavirus disease, and so that's why we need to get on and start the testing in humans.
Currently, there are more than 60 vaccines in development, with 20 countries working on trials. Australia is among them, along with scientists from Israel to Denmark, Canada to India. The vaccine being trialled in the UK passed its first hurdle at the CSIRO's Australian Animal Health Laboratory in Geelong.
The vaccine, when it was given to these ferrets, there were no adverse reactions to the vaccine. So we know that the vaccine is at least safe.
Australian researchers believe human trials will begin here this year.
These vaccines that are going into people now, there's still much more development in many more people before we're actually at the point that the vaccine is ready.
Normally, vaccine development takes years, not months.
It's right up there, top of the list in terms of urgency. So people have moved at absolute blinding speed, in my opinion.
In the long run, a coronavirus vaccine will also need to be affordable and widely available to the billions of people who need it. Bridget Brennan, ABC News.
Australia's success with flattening the curve means it could be possible to eradicate the disease here. Barter's medical reporter Sophie Scott explains that isn't necessarily a goal we want to achieve.
Eliminating the virus might sound like a good idea, but it's simpler in theory than in practice.
If we did lock off our borders completely, absolutely no one was allowed in the country, then theoretically it would be possible.
So experts say suppressing the virus is more realistic.
The problem with using words like elimination and eradication is that we are a non-immune population. So you have to be so sure that you've got to that point that you would need to extend your restrictions for so long.
It means Australia would still have a small number of cases to manage. Let's take the Northern Territory, for example. There have been just 27 cases. 15 have recovered, leaving just 12 people with the illness. The Territory hasn't added any cases in more than a fortnight, so when those last patients recover, the Territory will have theoretically eradicated coronavirus. But short of closing the borders forever, eliminating or suppressing the virus doesn't necessarily mean life goes back to normal.
I don't see us shaking hands for the rest of this year. I think we can perhaps use other ways to greet people.
To be safe, some businesses may need to rethink how they operate.
People who have been working from home will continue to do so if they can, to minimise a congregation of people.
Let's not forget how quickly this virus can spread. On average, one person infects another 3 people. Those 3 can go on to infect another 9. 9 can infect 27. All of a sudden, 200 people have the disease, and we're back to where we were a few weeks ago. When restrictions do ease, contact tracing and testing will need to be scaled and outbreaks quarantined. Sophie Scott, ABC News.
Restrictions at Bondi Beach will be eased slightly to allow for surfing and swimming. From next Tuesday, there will be strict access points to the water at Bondi and the neighbouring beaches of Bronte and Tamarama. The sand will remain off limits apart from walking the set paths to the ocean. Bondi Beach has been closed for a month after thousands ignored social distancing rules and crowded onto the sand.
We really don't want people to come into Waverley. Visitors need to stay away, and if you do see that there are large numbers of people, please turn around, go away, come back later.
If people don't, the entire beach will be closed again. League bosses say they've been given the green light to restart the season next month. Let's go live now to the ABC's national sport editor David Mark at NRL headquarters in Sydney. David, what can you tell us?
Juanita, for a long time the National Rugby League has been talking about the 28th of May as an aspirational date for when it wants to start the competition. But today, Rugby League Commissioner Wayne Pearce, who heads the Project Apollo working group, said that date, the 28th of May, is a definite. The competition will start then. What's more, he said that teams will also start training from the 4th of May, so they'll have about 3.5 weeks to get ready. He said all 16 teams will be playing in New South Wales. So that means the 3 Queensland teams, as well as the New Zealand Warriors, will have to come here to Sydney to play and train. There are still no details about where the games will be played and how far apart they'll be, but they say they want to have very strict biosecurity protocols, and later this week we'll learn exactly what that plan is. He says they've been talking with governments. Let's hear what he had to say.
What we're doing is we're going through a process where we're letting the government know exactly what our standards are, so we're transparent around that, and that will ensure the safety of our players. It'll also ensure the safety of the community.
So the 28th of May is the date that they're still aiming for. That's 5 weeks away though, and as we know, a lot can happen in that time.
Speaking to us there from League headquarters. Well, the rainfall outlook is promising this winter, and a large part of that comes down to ocean temperatures, Graham.
Yes, it is, Juanita, and as you can see right around the nation, we are seeing generally warmer than average temperatures, and it's the warmer than average eastern Indian Ocean temperatures that are going to result in increased moisture feeding into seasonal northwest cloud bands. Now, they interact with fronts and troughs as they sweep across the country, and they're most typical around the autumn and into the winter period. Now, this pattern should also reduce the impact this year of the 1.4 degrees climate warming that's been experienced since 1910, and that's been linked to a reduction of about 10 to 15% in our usual cool season rainfall in recent decades. Unfortunately, here's a dry forecast for the rest of this week. I'll be back with that shortly.
Thanks, Graham. Still to come this hour, the soaring price of vital protective gear for health workers.
Back in January, a box of the N95 masks would cost about $40. Now they would cost about $700 to $800.
The prices look excessive, unjustified and unpardonable in current circumstances.
Also, how the coronavirus pandemic is hurting Australia Post. That's coming up.
A former University of New South Wales student who was falsely accused of terror offences is demanding an inquiry into his ordeal. Mohammed Kamer Nizamdeen was held in solitary confinement for a month. Before it emerged, he was framed by a colleague. Mr Nizamdeen has given his first full interview to Triple J hack reporter Avani Dias.
In his hometown of Colombo, Sri Lanka, Mohammed Nizamdeen is far from solitary confinement in one of Australia's high-security prisons. He spent a month there wrongly accused of terror offences, including a plot to kill the Prime Minister and bomb the Sydney Harbour Bridge.
I still have flashbacks, and sometimes I still have dreams about it.
Mohammed Nizamdeen was arrested in August 2018 after a colleague at the University of New South Wales IT department claimed he found a notebook on his desk with the detailed terror plans. The former international student says he was taken into custody by undercover police while getting lunch at the university.
I actually asked, is this a joke? I thought this was a university, like someone was doing a prank on YouTube or something like that.
Mr Nizamdeen says he was not allowed to see a lawyer for 5 days or speak to his family while in jail.
I asked for books, obviously, to pass the time, and I remember that was the time that I think I prayed a lot to God. I never prayed so much in my life.
A month later, the 25-year-old was released and all charges dropped after an expert could not conclusively say it was his handwriting in the notebook and there was no other evidence. In December 2018, Mr Nizamdeen's university colleague, Arsalan Khawaja, was accused of writing the notebook to frame Mr Nizamdeen. Police claimed Khawaja was jealous over Mr Nizamdeen's friendship with a woman and his success at the university. Arsalan Khawaja, who is the brother of Australian cricket star Usman Khawaja, pleaded guilty to the charges last year and is in prison waiting to be sentenced.
Everyone was just devastated by this, and I just hope he gets what he deserves.
The ABC has asked both the New South Wales Police and the Australian Federal Police for a statement or an interview, but they've declined, saying the matter is still before the courts. But the police have previously maintained that officers did the right thing by arresting Mr Nizamdeen, saying they have to act quickly on alleged terror threats. Mr Nizamdeen is now suing the Australian Federal Police over the ordeal. Avni Dias, ABC News, Sydney.
And you can hear the full interview with Mr Nizamdeen in a special episode of Triple J's Hack podcast. Australia is taking advantage of record low oil prices to stockpile a national emergency supply of fuel. The decision's been announced as military tensions rise in a crucial maritime trading route, where an Australian warship is training with the United States. Here's Defence correspondent Andrew Green.
On increasingly troubled waters, the US Navy's putting on a show of strength, joining Australian warship HMAS Parramatta for military exercises through the South China Sea. Since the coronavirus pandemic began, China's rapid military build-up in this disputed region has continued unabated, with Beijing fortifying artificial reefs and confronting other nations who claim the territory as their own.
To the Chinese, it's a big opportunity for them to stake their claims in South China Sea and make it theirs once and for all.
The strategic region's also vital for oil supplies. More than 30% of global trade in maritime crude makes its way through here. Now Australia's spending almost $100 million to create a national strategic reserve.
We are going to take advantage of historically low fuel prices.
It's a very welcome first step after years of successive Australian government saying that there was no problem.
Security experts have long been warning Australia needs to bolster national oil supplies in case of a major crisis. Well, that's arrived, and so has the idea of a reserve. But it won't be stored here, instead kept in the United States.
Having something in the United States doesn't provide for our national interest to be protected in the way that it should.
Now the hunt is on for local storage solutions. Andrew Green, ABC News, Canberra.
The coronavirus crisis has caused the biggest disruption to Anzac Day in a century. There'll still be a commemoration on Saturday at the National War Memorial in Canberra, but it'll be closed to the public. And as National Affairs correspondent Greg Jennett reports, thousands of Australians will mark the day in their own way.
At the going down of the sun and in the morning.
Lest we forget.
She'll remember them, only in solitude this year.
I'm going to light a candle. I'm going to think about those who've brought the war home, who live in isolation every day because they can't make sense of what they've seen in war.
An Iraq War veteran, Sarah Watson, was a warrior for 15 years, came home to fight post-traumatic stress.
I just had felt like I'd let Australia down.
And for a time, lost touch with the essence of Anzac. She's rediscovered the spirit, as well as parallels between the call to arms and the communal cry to vanquish a virus.
And that really embodies what the Anzac Day spirit is all about.
Lest we forget.
Down driveways the nation over, Australians confined to their homes will somehow give their own expression to that spirit. While the monuments to mighty losses tower in towns everywhere, they'll mostly go unattended on Saturday, but tended to all the same by voluntary keepers of the eternal flame.
I'll be getting up very early in the morning. I'll be putting my uniform on. I'll be coming here and I will be observing a small ceremony.
So too at the biggest of them all, the Australian War Memorial. Its locked doors will be prized open for a select few. There'll be no organised march here or anywhere else, and although Australians may not realise it, as they go about their personal commemorations, they'll actually be stepping back another age. It took a while for the idea of an officially sanctioned National Day to evolve, especially after Spanish flu wiped out events in 1919. Finally, in 1920 it happened, and the long march through time began, bunkering down occasionally, only to advance again. Greg Jennett, ABC News, Canberra.
While you won't be able to go along in person to Anzac Day services, there will be live coverage on ABC TV, radio and online. Join us from 5:30 a.m. for the National Memorial Service live from Canberra, and from 10 a.m. we'll bring you the Sydney Memorial Service. In finance news, the local share market and the Australian dollar both closed flat today after the oil price went back above zero. Here's Alan Kohler.
Before we get into today's action, I just want to show you a picture that's worth 1,000 words of yesterday's prediction by RBA Governor Philip Lowe that hours worked in Australia in total will fall by 20%. Now, in March, we all worked 1.78 billion hours, and the annual change ranges from hardly anything to not very much. And it's usually up. Here's what a fall of 20% looks like. And speaking of holy cow moves, today's economic news was that retail sales rose by 8.2% in March, which is the biggest rise since the statisticians started measuring them in April 1982. So it could be the biggest ever, we just don't know. It's all about groceries, of course, and not much else. There's never been as big a difference between retail winners and retail losers. Shops are either having Christmas or they're having zero. The financial market focus today continued to be on oil. The West Texas crude price did get back above zero to $9 US a barrel. It's all because these prices that we quote are futures contracts. The May contract closed out last night and required physical delivery of the oil, as it usually does, which nobody wanted to take because there's nowhere to store it. So traders were desperately paying not to take the oil. Everyone's now trading June contracts and beyond, but storage is still full, so the price will probably go negative again next month. Not that petrol will go negative, of course, so that they're paying us to take it, but it might come down some more. The local share market closed flat today after solid falls in the US, Europe and Asia, and the Australian dollar remains stuck at just above 63 US cents. And that's finance.
Time for the weather now. If we have to be stuck in a pattern for a few days, then sunny and mild is not such a bad one, Graham.
Yeah, it's not too bad, particularly when we're looking at the potential of wetter conditions ahead. And sunny and mild it was in Sydney today, but our minimums still remain cooler than average for suburbs away from the coast. 7.1 at Campbelltown was 4.2 below average, and the city's top of 27 was 5 above. The frost was confined pretty much to just parts of the Snowy Mountains. Bega, Cobar and Albion Park joined Campbelltown with minimums 4 degrees cooler than average. Murwillumbah, Casino and Mount Seaview joined Sydney City with the warmest maximums compared to average. Now, the state is mostly cloud-free and it should remain that way until at least Friday. That's when we see an increase in some high cloud, particularly through the southern half. That's as a cold front just clips the far southern mainland. Now, the belt of high pressure over the state will keep the impacts of any of these fronts to really just about those southern border districts, although a weak front will enter the state as we move through Sunday. Now, Adelaide, Melbourne, as well as towns in between, will see some showers developing, particularly through the afternoon and evening. We've also got widespread showers spreading across Tasmania, but they're not expected to reach Hobart until the evening. Now, there may be a few areas of cloud in the south and east and also the northeast in the morning, but the southwest later in the day could see a very isolated shower, really just about the far border districts at this stage. So we've got some areas of patchy fog anywhere away from the coast in the northeast, a sunny and dry day throughout, and we're also expecting to see light winds. And those light winds will tend north to northeast on the waters as we move through the afternoon. Some areas of fog along the ranges, a sunny day throughout. That's apart from some early cloud in the far southeast corner. Northwest to northeasterly winds, although they'll shift more southwest to southeast about the south coast and the Eden waters during the morning. Now, cold start for the eastern inland, a sunny day with moderate northwest to northeast winds. And light and variable winds on Sydney waters, they'll tend northeast in the afternoon as well. We've got lows ranging from 7 to 14. Our tops will reach a very pleasant 23 to 27. We could see some areas of patchy fog. These should be mostly about the inland suburbs, and then a sunny day to follow. And that sunshine continues, just a little bit of cloud to end off the weekend and start next week, but the showers holding off at this stage till Wednesday, Juanita.
Thanks, Graham. Lee Sales is here now with 7:30.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, the exorbitant price hike on face masks leaving health workers vulnerable.
The prices look excessive, exploitative, unjustified and unpardonable.
You cannot operate by exploiting the community during this time of crisis.
And is there enough flu vaccine for everyone?
We've got patient lists, we've got GPs who are ready to do it. The only thing that's missing is the flu vaccination.
There's going to be plenty of vaccine available as long as people wait.
Plus, why your post has been delayed.
Every single other business at this time has adapted, and at the moment we're not really seeing anything from Australia Post.
We're working as hard as we possibly can.
One of the biggest challenges for authorities at the moment is ensuring that everyone working on the front line has access to the critical protective equipment they need. You'd think that at a time like this, people wouldn't dare unfairly profit from the need for doctors and nurses to be safe, but unfortunately they would. Grace Tobin reports.
From this Sydney warehouse, medical masks and gowns are trucked to frontline health workers around the country. But in just a few months, the prices soared.
When we had some quotes from the company back in January, a box of the N95 masks would cost about $40, and now they would cost about $700 to $800.
Pharmacist Linda Nguyen is a loyal customer of Livingston International, one of Australia's largest medical supply companies. But as the COVID-19 pandemic unleashed panic buying, the company dramatically increased the price of vital protective gear.
I'm just shocked with the greed that this company have. You know, you cannot operate by exploiting the community during this time of crisis. That's invoices from last year.
The pharmacy has provided 7:30 with emails and invoices revealing details of Livingston's extraordinary price hike. This box of 20 face masks was purchased for $42 in late January. The same box of masks is now being sold on the company's website for more than $780.
We have a really good relationship with one of the representatives in the company, so I was able to express my shock and just my, disbelief of the prices. And, even the rep himself had no control and no say in what prices the company set, and it's all down to management.
Livingston International says its face mask manufacturers have massively hiked up their prices. But an investigation by 7:30 reveals Livingston's prices are among the most expensive on the market. Other businesses charge between $70 to $250 for the same box of 20 masks.
It is a very, very powerful brand in Australia. Look after your Australian consumers.
Farron Ostilli bulk buys from Livingston International for retail pharmacies across Victoria and Tasmania. He first noticed the company raising prices in early January when large parts of the country were affected by bushfires and smoke.
So we placed an order with Livingston and for these masks, and the pricing came in 27% higher than our last purchase. Now, I actually wrote back to the manager who had sent me the product and I said, I'm not prepared to accept this. This is price gouging.
After several heated telephone conversations, Farron says Livingston International refunded his credit before shutting down his business account. Since then, the company's prices for all types of face masks have continued to go up.
In July 2019, at recommended retail prices, it was $3.95. In January, $4.95. Today, that identical product is now $39.30 per mask.
730 contacted Livingston International to ask about its price increases. I was hoping to speak with someone in regards to why the prices are so high for masks and other PPE. The company declined an interview.
It doesn't seem like there's any managers on staff at the moment available.
But in a statement to 730 today, Livingston said it was providing access to critical supplies despite increased costs, and that it was working hard to source other suppliers to resume normal trading. 730 understands that Livingston International has been referred to the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, but the ACCC won't confirm if it's investigating the company.
At most, the ACCC can monitor some prices, especially if directed by the Minister, but has no real price control powers.
Former ACCC Chairman Alan Fell says Australia needs better price control laws to police businesses like Livingston International.
The prices look excessive, exploitative, unjustified and unpardonable in current circumstances unless they can give us a good explanation.
With more masks and other protective equipment on order from overseas to meet demand, prices are expected to fall in coming weeks.
We've definitely seen the supply improve in the past probably week to 10 days, but we're still seeing prices which at the moment they're probably 3 or 4 times what current retail was.
As the CEO of a large GP practice, Jeff Blitzblau has tried almost every avenue possible to source protective equipment for his doctors and nurses.
I was lucky enough that we found a couple of big shops on eBay we bought quite a few off, but I did notice there were individuals who I'd assume would have bought up in bulk with the intention of making money off this situation.
Suppliers back in China are also being accused of price gouging. Medcon, one of Australia's only mask factories, says it's currently being charged 5 to 10 times more than usual for the raw materials it needs to keep production going.
Unfortunately, I think we've got a situation where it's a seller's market, and they're certainly, I hate using the phrase, but I think they're gouging the market.
The mask manufacturer has teamed up with the CSIRO and a local textile business called Texstore to create a material to replace Chinese imports.
If you think about material scientists, they're a bit like experimental chefs in the kitchen, trying to cook up the secret sauce we need to create this unique homegrown material.
The federal government's told 730 it won't tolerate price gouging during the pandemic. The Livingston International matter is now with the federal police. We know the short-term health consequences of coronavirus can be profound, but how about the longer-term impact? The ABC's Dr. Norman Swan takes a look.
We are facing the prospect of significant worsening of health inequalities, and that's really frightening.
The immediate effects of the COVID-19 pandemic over the past 4 months have been devastating, and they could well expose existing social and economic fault lines.
When the epidemic struck, princes and paupers alike were susceptible. The Prince of Wales, the Prime Minister in the UK. Then the next phase with lockdown exposed the sharp divisions in society, those who could work from home and those who couldn't, those who had reserves of income or wealth and those who couldn't afford to eat.
Even if we keep the pandemic in check, we will live with the consequences for years to come. Now, one of the longer-lasting effects is predicted to be a transformation in the way doctors interact with their patients, now that telehealth consultations are reimbursed by Medicare.
It's a decade's worth of work in a matter of days.
There's no doubt that being able to consult your doctor from home can have huge benefits for people with chronic diseases. But there may be circumstances where remote consultations aren't a good thing.
It's not something which is a replacement for a physical visit, and it's actually not that easy to jump straight from a world where you've been using face-to-face visits to one where you're using the phone or video. don't have access to all the same cues, you don't have access to doing a physical examination, and it actually isn't the same.
And there are groups of people for whom telehealth might create more problems than it solves.
What we're finding is that a lot of our patients from non-English speaking backgrounds prefer to come in and see us face-to-face because they find it very difficult to manage the technology for video or for phones. It's actually a bit discriminatory.
For many cancers, early diagnosis can save your life, or at the very least, avoid radical surgery and chemotherapy. Going forward 6 to 12 months, what are the chances that even this short period of lockdown could have serious consequences for people with cancer symptoms which haven't been followed up? Already, it looks as though there's been a significant drop in cancer notifications since the pandemic started.
We're concerned about the pausing of breast screen invitations, and we know that breast screen reduces mortality for women with breast cancer by somewhere between 30 and 40%. But we're also concerned about cervical screening.
But it's the hit to the economy that could have the biggest impact on our health. Sir Michael Marmot is a world authority on how the economy and inequality affect our health.
So one problem of health inequities are the differences between countries.
Through the key determinants of health, early child development, education, employment and working conditions, number 4, having enough money to live on, and number 5, environments, including housing. Things are likely to get much worse for all of those 5 come a global recession consequent upon the pandemic.
Australians in the lowest socioeconomic group are 37% more likely to die from the cancer than if they're in the highest socioeconomic group.
And while it might seem premature to talk about this, how we get out of this economic and debt spiral will also affect our health.
How do we create the conditions for people to have the capability to lead lives they have reason to value? Now, that should be the priority. And if that means tolerating debt and deficit when the interest rates are close to zero, then we tolerate it.
As mentioned, there's been a drop in the number of people visiting their GP. As Peter McCutcheon reports, authorities are concerned by that because they want all of us there getting our flu shots early this year.
Unusual measures for extraordinary times. This South Australian clinic is offering a drive-through flu vaccine service.
We offered them the idea and they've taken up with relish. They love it.
No, all good. So you know how to get on to us if you need consultation or...
It was set up to cater for those most vulnerable to COVID-19.
They'd been told that they should stay home, be isolated as much as possible, and they thought coming into a doctor's surgery could make them far more likely to pick something up. So it seemed like a contradiction in terms. So we decided that we'd try this one.
We didn't want to go to the surgery and be with other people, you know, if they're poorly and they're coughing, because David can pick things up very quickly.
For David McConey, who suffers from asthma, the drive-through service is a welcome innovation.
You don't have to sit in waiting rooms, you just...
drive up in your car.
You just book a time with the doctors and jump in your car, and it's just like going to a fast food place.
Health authorities are urging everyone over 6 months to get their flu shots a month earlier this year, while the infection rate of COVID-19 is relatively low. It would also lessen the danger of a flu outbreak at this critical time.
Part of the problem with the flu is that it uses exactly the same medical assets as COVID-19 does. So that if we do get a big outbreak of influenza like we did a couple of years ago, the ICU beds will be used, the hospital beds will be used, and they're also the beds that we would be using for the COVID-19 patients.
In response to anxiety among many older patients who might be wary of visiting their local GP, doctors say they're ensuring clinics are as safe as possible.
I think GP clinics are not that risky. We spend a lot of time screening patients, and people shouldn't be afraid of their GP clinics.
As well as dealing with anxious patients, many GPs are becoming frustrated with the shortage of flu vaccines.
Causes a lot of anxiety amongst GPs. They really do want to get on with it. You know, we've got patient lists of people who do want to get their flu vaccinations done. We've got GPs who are ready to do it. The only thing that's missing is the flu vaccination.
There hasn't been an actual strategy of who we need to go first talked about by the principal people that should be doing the talking.
Former public health bureaucrat Dr. Colin Hughes compares the surge in demand for flu shots to the panic buying of toilet paper. He argues it could have been avoided by giving priority to vulnerable people and essential workers.
We need to let some people go first. We don't need to do the toilet roll ransacking of the supermarket. There's going to be plenty of vaccine available as long as people wait until May or June to make their appointment with either their pharmacist or their GP, and let those other people go first.
The College of GPs disagrees, maintaining there's enough vaccine for everyone to get their shots early, although distribution problems may lead to delays of 1 or 2 weeks.
It's really important that everyone gets their flu shot. Not only do you protect yourself against the flu, you protect your family and friends against passing the flu on to them, and you also help to protect the community.
But even if vaccines are available, some people are struggling to even get into a clinic.
Would have been very difficult because I don't drive and I've got to rely on my son to take me.
81-year-old Ray Jarrett has only recently got out of hospital after a nasty fall, so he's had to rely on a home vaccination service provided by Calvary Community Care.
That's great. Just drop your shoulders so your arm's nice and relaxed.
Eventually we would have got there, but this way is so much easier.
Put the Band-Aid on.
It's worrying, you know, with the cross-infections, that community infection that can happen. So for somebody just to be able to come in the home is fantastic.
In these unprecedented times, communities have come up with new ways to vaccinate and allay fears.
Like everybody else around the country, we're just isolating and doing our own thing, but it's a bit of a relief to think that we haven't got to worry about the flu as well.
When the coronavirus outbreak began, it was compared to the flu, and a lot of people still think of it like a respiratory illness. But that's not exactly the case. New research involving an Australian doctor in New York has found more evidence that it affects the body's blood supply. He and his colleagues have now seen several cases of stroke, including in young patients with only minor COVID-19 symptoms. Dr. Tom Oxley joined me from the Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. Dr. Oxley, is it accurate to say that while the symptoms of COVID-19 are flu-like, when it advances, it's a disease that's actually affecting the body's blood system, not the respiratory system?
Yeah, I think that's a fair representation. We're still learning about how the virus causes disease inside the body and in particular other organs. Our experience has been in the brain side, so we're seeing patients that are having brain complications from the disease. And of those, most concerningly, we're seeing an increase in the number of strokes that are happening in our patients presenting to Mount Sinai Hospital. But it's not just all strokes, it's strokes in young people, in the large blood vessels that we're seeing a significant increase in, 7-fold increase in the last couple of weeks, actually.
How did you notice this was happening?
I was doing a procedure on a 44-year-old male who had no past history, who'd been at home for a week with a fever and feeling unwell. And that's unusual. We only see that every few weeks, and we've seen 5 in the last 2 weeks. And then we started to see a run of these. So that led us to put this case series together and submit that to New England Journal of Medicine.
Is it people that have been in ventilators in ICU, or is it something different?
No, we are talking about people at home with COVID who may have mild symptoms of COVID, but who are then developing sudden onset of large vessel stroke and then requiring to come into hospital as an emergency.
Is the stroke situation present in older patients as well?
It is present in older patients, but we're seeing, in the last few weeks anyway, a particular increase in the spike of young patients.
If you have coronavirus and you are one of the people who is likely to be affected by stroke, are there signs that this is coming, and is there anything that can be done to ward it off?
2 of the patients in our cohort did not call the ambulance for 20 and 26 hours because they were afraid of coming into hospital, and because we've been told that if you're sick at home, symptoms of fever and shortness of breath are the ones that you might call the ambulance for. But if anyone develops symptoms of stroke, and so the acronym to remember is FAST, face, facial droop, arm weakness, speech disturbance, and then time, call the ambulance immediately.
You mentioned you've seen a small number of cases. Is it too small a sample to extrapolate from in terms of saying we can expect to see stroke in X percentage of coronavirus cases?
It's certainly a small sample size, and we are learning as we go. We are hearing from our colleagues around the city that stroke numbers are up all around the city. So yes, it's still too early to know absolutely what the real numbers are going to be. But one thing that's concerning is the D-dimer is a test that's becoming a useful indicator of how severe disease is, and D-dimer is a marker of how likely your blood is to clot. So that tells you that what we're seeing is a disease that is partially working at least by increasing blood clotting in the body, and that's why we think the increased risk of stroke is occurring.
Dr. Oxley, thanks for your time. If you've tried to post a letter or parcel recently, you've probably noticed the delays plaguing Australia Post. The demand from online delivery is creating big challenges, and as Ashlyn McGee and Kirsten Robb report, it's forcing big changes too.
Like most parents, Bethany Kernaghan is trying to keep her kids occupied during lockdown. She bought 2 trikes with trailers from an online toy shop on the 20th of March.
I thought, do you know what, for Easter I'm going to go all out, I'm going to buy them both each a bike, and it's going to be happy days.
What do you mean mine?
Bethany, 4-year-old Declan and 1-year-old Lewis live in a small border town nearly 300 kilometres from Melbourne.
So online was my only option really.
But Easter came and went and the bikes hadn't arrived.
The world was so dull at the moment. We had these 2 bikes, we were waking up Easter, it was going to be good, and then that all went wrong as well.
Bethany is one of thousands of people experiencing major delays, waiting for Australia Post to deliver parcels. Right now, Australia Post is as busy as it is at Christmas. But unlike Christmas, there's no end in sight. Online department store purchases are up 473%. Fashion purchases have trebled. And Australia Post is delivering about 1.8 million parcels a day.
It's actually really busy. We've had more than 100% growth in parcels in the last couple of days, and even bigger than Christmas. And the interesting thing of that is, of course, at Christmas you have plenty of time to plan for that. But this has just happened in a couple of weeks.
Australia Post has made major changes. Regular mail will only be delivered every second day in metro areas, which means 2,000 staff can be redeployed to parcel delivery.
It's like a whole new army that can be appointed at delivering parcels, so it should enable parcels to be delivered much faster, particularly for rural and regional places where it's really, really critically important.
But it's not a complete fix. The biggest problem Australia Post has is air freight. In addition to its own fleet, it usually sends parcels on regular commercial flights, which have ground to a halt.
We were putting onto the Qantas passenger planes up to about 700 tonnes a week of parcels. And that literally, over a few weeks, went to zero. Now, as I've said, we've worked with Qantas, we've chartered our own planes, but one of our biggest challenges is those regional parts. We can't get that chartered plane capacity into those regional towns.
Which means a long wait as parcels wind their way across the country in the back of B-doubles, and some very frustrated customers.
We're frustrated like them, but as we say, the plane services are down. There's not so many flying now. There's not so many trucks on the road.
Local post office manager Andrew Ferguson has worked for Australia Post for more than 40 years and can't remember it ever being this busy, even at Christmas.
We're doing anything from jewellery, clothing, insects, aquarium products, you name it, it's coming through, yeah.
Early each morning, local Warrnambool postie Leon Craig loads the parcels onto his bike for delivery.
We'd have a lot less parcels normally, and it'd be a lot more relaxing. A bit more stressful at the moment with all the parcels.
He's fully loaded, and it's only his first run of the day.
Most people are very understanding, but I just tell them that we're working as hard as we possibly can, because this peak was unprecedented, we didn't expect it.
Australia Post says roughly 90% of parcels are now finding their way to recipients.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We have spoken to customers and we've asked customers for their understanding as we go through big change. I do understand their frustration.
This one? Yeah.
Australia Post eventually told Bethany Kernaghan her kids' trikes had been lost. But earlier today, she was told they've been found and she can now pick them up from the post office.
I think every single other business at this time has adapted and sorted out a way to get through coronavirus and everything that's going on at the moment. And at the moment, we're not really seeing anything from Australia Post or hearing anything. It's just, sorry, coronavirus, that's it.
We put the call out a few weeks ago for video messages from grandkids to their grandparents, and we were totally overwhelmed with their responses. Tonight, we hear instead from the grandparents.
We've written this song for all the kids who are stuck at home doing homeschooling, and it's especially for our grandkids.
Staying at home, glued to my phone, waiting for my friends to ring.
Here's a big hello to Harry in Brisbane, Hazel and Maeve in Canberra. Bran and I miss you this much. But don't forget to keep on dancing. Bye.
From the Sunshine Coast to Melbourne and to Canberra. Hello Poppy. Hello Banjo. Hello Zoe. We miss you so much.
See you soon, guys.
Bye.
Hi Lincoln. Hi Spencer. It's Grandad. Don't forget, Grandad. How are you? Big kiss. I love you guys.
I miss you, my beautiful grandchildren. I miss you a lot. I wish to see you.
Hey. It's fun. You're only 1.5 meters away.
Hi. I'd like to say a big hello to our brave and wonderful Malakuta girls, Rosie and Lexi. Hello, darlings. We're missing you so much. We can't wait to see you.
Hi, this is Grandad Buzz from the Central Coast at Baddo Bay. We miss you, Sia and Elijah. We hope that we can see you soon. Have a great time.
Oh, and Maggie and Ollie over in Oregon, we miss you so much, and we're going to see you at Christmas time.
To my grandchildren in Tokyo and in Madrid, I miss you very much, and I love you very much. I'll see you again next year, hopefully.
It's Gong Gong Popo and Mama Yeye saying hello.
Hope you all are well. We miss you very much during this coronavirus lockdown.
Hey Jack, Poppy loves you, mate. Hopefully we'll see you soon, be able to give you a hug and a kiss and take you to the park, eh? See you soon. See ya.
Hello Angus. Hello Harvey. Hello Oscar. Hello Emon. Oh, I miss you very much. And I hope to see you very, very soon.
That's the program for tonight. Thanks for your company. Good night.
Next on ABC and iView, Tom Gleeson's big brass mug